Hello, welcome to Level Change channel. My name is Claudio Fonseca. I'm a real Boeing 777 pilot, and today we are going to talk about the 777 hydraulic systems, more specifically about the 777 center hydraulic system. I decided to create this video based on my previous video on this channel where I perform a flight from Saint-Martin to Paris, and I use a software called FSI panel, and I use this one of the scenarios on FSI panel where eventually I had a hydraulic leak on the center system for this hydraulic, and eventually I lost completely the center hydraulic system, and I show you how to handle this failure on the 777. Okay, but I realize that there are much more for us to explore in this situation, and specifically I want to show you how the PMDG system behaves, which is quite accurate, and also I want to describe to you the Autoland capabilities on the 777, especially in a situation where you lose one hydraulic system like the center one, and also how you configure this airplane for your approach and for go around in case you need. Okay, so on your screen right now you can see a diagram of the three hydraulic systems on the 777. Basically you have the left system, the right system. Let me see if you can see the right system as well. Yeah, the right system is just behind my webcam here, so you can see the right system, and also the center system. Okay, so we are going to focus today on the center system, which is the main hydraulic system for this airplane. Why this is the main one? Because it controls a lot of things, including flaps, slats, landing gear, and of course some flight controls. I'm going to show you everything that the center system is responsible for at the end of this video, but basically this is what you need to know for the beginning of this video. So if we go to the second page here, I show you only the center hydraulic system, basically the reservoir here, and what is very important from this is that you have two lines. One line that is around this level, basically at 40%. Okay, so basically you need 40% of hydraulic fluid in the reservoir to have fluid enough to run towards your electrical primary pump or your air-driven demand pumps or your ram air turbine. Okay, so you need 40% of hydraulic fluid to go to have enough fluid to go through these pumps. Okay, on the other hand, the line that takes the fluid towards the electrical C1 pump is at the bottom of the reservoir, and this is very important because with this Boeing create a way to keep some part of the center hydraulic working when you have a leak around the system. Let me give you one example. If you have a leak on the trailing edge flaps, okay, let's say on this line towards the trailing edge flaps, when you reach or when reaching trailing edge flaps, you have a leak here. Basically, in this case, then if you have a leak, the hydraulic fluid is not going to come back to the center hydraulic system. Okay, so I will give you one example. Let's say that you have fluid coming through your electrical C2, and then it goes all the way here, and eventually it reaches the flight controls for the tail of the airplane, okay? So if you have a leak here, you are not going to have the fluid returning, as it says here, to the center system. And then this quantity is going to start dropping, and eventually you do not have 40% of fluid. So you do not have fluid coming here anymore, or here, whatever, or any way to your primary flight control surfaces and everything. So what happens is, if you have any leak on this side, the system can isolate this electrical C1, and these are the isolation valves, this one and this one. So the system stays, well, then these isolation valves prevent more fluid leak, and you will keep your C1 electrical pump working towards your alternate brakes. So Boeing is making sure that you have enough brakes to stop this airplane once you are landing, okay? So this is one part of the system itself, okay? Of course, if you have a leak on this line, for example, then there is nothing else you can do, and eventually you are going to lose the whole quantity for the whole fluid quantity on your center hydraulic, okay? And this is what happened on the previous video, okay? So we have a complete hydraulic center system loss, okay? But I want to explain to you why we have then this isolation, or these two isolation valves. So this is going to try to prevent you to lose all your center hydraulic fluid in case you have the leak only in one part of the system, okay? And that's the first thing that I'm going to show you on the PMDG, okay? So I'm already flying on my flight simulator right now, and I'm going to show you the hydraulic indications, and you are going to see more or less this diagram on the airplane as well. So let's go to our sim, and here we are. Basically, what we have right now is 0.63% of fluid. So we are still losing hydraulic fluid, but right now we have enough fluid to go through our primary electrical pump towards all the systems of this airplane. Also through our electrical C2 pump to go towards all the system of these airplanes. Well, sorry, of this airplane. Once we reach 0.4%, which means actually 40% for this hydraulic fluid about quantity, we are going to see that the isolation valves are going to close. And then, one more time, if you have any leak between the line towards your electrical C2, air C1, air C2, or ram air turbine, you are going to stop the quantity of your hydraulic to go even low, and then you are going to still have pressure and fluid for your alternate brakes, okay? This is the first part of the system. So right now we have 0.55. Eventually we are going to reach 0.40, and I'm going to stop the video right now really quick, so I can come back when everything is about to happen. So here we go. So here we are back now with 42%, and eventually we are going to see 0.4, and you're going to see that all the indications, they turn amber, and then we are going to have the first indication that something is wrong with the center hydraulic system. Okay, 0.40 low. Okay, as you can see, and in a couple of seconds, not only that low indication is going to show, but also you are going to see, yeah, this message: hydraulic quantity low center. Note one more time, when this happens, the isolation valve close, and then if the leak was only on this side, you are going to lose the rest of the fluid that is still on the line, but eventually you are going to still have enough fluid to keep the electrical C1 pump running towards alternate reserve brakes. Here on the PMDG, you do not see a green line towards the alternate reserve brakes, but this is the only system that the electrical C1 pump is feeding at this time. Okay, and then there is of course a checklist about it, and this checklist states that the center hydraulic quantity is low, and then it tells us that nose wheel steering may be slow to react. Excessive force on the nose wheel steering tiller may cause abrupt tiller movement in the opposite direction. So basically what happened is telling you, because this valve is closed, you may have some problems with the nose gear steering, and there is a situation where you are going to recover this valve. I'm trying to explain this to you later on as well. Basically, when you have less than 60 knots, this isolation valve is going to open. So once you land, have less than 60 knots, this isolation valve is going to open, and it will allow you to taxi if the problem was not on the nose gear steering. Okay, of course, if you have the problem there, and then you are going to see that you will keep losing later on then the rest of the fluid. In this case, I have two failures. I have two leaks. I have one leak on the electrical C2 and one leak on the electrical C1, which in this case is not going to prevent the system from running low as 0. Okay, so we are going to lose all the hydraulic fluid. Okay, in the real airplane itself, as we do not have enough fluid to go towards our electrical C2, eventually we are going to see the electrical C2 pump fault indication, and we were going to run the checklist for the electrical C2. Here in PMDG, they were not quite accurate about this quantity itself, so the electrical C2 is still working. Okay, one more time, I'm bringing you this information from our manual here, in this case the maintenance manual. Okay, so this is basically what is left on the center tank right now, or less than this. Okay, so let's go back to the sim, let's stay on the sim, and eventually we are going to see that the quantity is going to go as low as 0. You are going then to start losing your pressure, because then you do not have the fluid anymore on the system, and you are going to see that the electrical pumps and even the air demand pumps, they are going to fail because of the lack of hydraulic fluid. Okay, I'm not going to stop the video at this point. We still have 16 or 15% is going to drop quite fast. Okay, as I told you, or basically one more thing that I want to tell you, when you have the indication going down like this, very steady, it can be sensor fault, but it's very rare, because usually when you have a sensor fault, you will have erratic indications, or the indication is going to drop to something and it's going to stay there. It's really rare that you see this this very gradient decrease in indication, and this is not real, but it can happen as well. Okay, so the system can failure in many different ways, and you can never disregard an sensor fault. Okay, but as we are going to see today, as in the previous video, we actually lost completely the hydraulic fluid for the center hydraulic system. Okay, so almost there, 0.8 now. The pressure is still good, 2,940, around 3,000 psi is the pressure on all three hydraulic systems, and we are going to see that once we have no fluid anymore, then the pumps are going to start to fail. I'm going to keep on this screen if you want to know the messages that are coming. You see now the electrical C1 is already gone. Pressure is dropping. So we have the message for that pump. Then we are going to have the message for the system itself. Okay, so the system pressure is going to drop almost to zero, and we are going to keep losing the hydraulic quantity until it reaches zero as well. And then here we are at the part of the simulation from the previous video, where we had hydraulic pressure system center. Okay, I went through this checklist on the previous video, but one thing I want to highlight on this one. Note that every time that you have this rectangle besides a message, it means you have a checklist with actions that you have to do, or with notes that you need to read, something that you have to interact with the airplane. Okay, so right now we have three checklists, which is hydraulic pressure system center, because we lost completely the pressure on this hydraulic system center. And we also have spoilers, null entry, auto speed brake, and the one that we actioned before, hydraulic quantity low center. Note, we already read the hydraulic quantity low center. That's why the symbol for the checklist is not here anymore, because we already deal with this situation. What happened is, if we go now to the checklist, and once we select here hydraulic pressure system center, and we run this checklist, okay, I'm going to run the checklist with you one more time. We need a C1 or C2 air demand pump to 1. In this case, this one goes to 1. We go back to the system. It says, it asks if the message blanks. The message didn't blank, so we say no, and then it wants us to take the C2 and also these two to off. Ground proximity flap override to flap override. And note, once we do this, we go to the next part of the checklist, which is inhibited checklist, auto speed brake and spoilers. If you go back on this video, you are going to see that by the time I press override, flap switch to override, the checklist icon that was on the spoilers and the auto speed brake, it disappear, because Boeing doesn't want you to do auto speed brake checklist and spoiler checklist, because all the indications and everything that you have to do on these two checklists, it is covered here on hydraulic pressure system center. Okay, so you do not have to read this message, you do not have to read this checklist. That's why Boeing already remove it from there. Okay, so you just finish your checklist, and then you are going to see one more thing, and I want to show you something. Basically, if we go here to the FMC and we go to initial reference in flight, or better, in flight after climb, when you are in cruise or descent, you press it once, it goes to the approach reference page, and here we have 3 possibilities for landing flaps: 20, 25, and 30. Basically, in normal situations, we can land only flaps 25 and 30. Okay, so those are the normal landing flaps on the 777. Okay, some non-normal situations are going to tell you to use flaps 20, and this is the case of this figure itself. It says use flaps 20 and VREF 20 for landing. So you are going to select the weight that you're going to land, and then you take flaps 20 and the speed from here, and so on. In this case, if we're going to land right now, we were going to use flaps 20, VREF of 176. Okay. One more thing. The 777 was certified to Autoland with flaps 20, 25, and 30, with all of them. Single engine and dual engine, both. Okay, so it doesn't matter the flap that you have, you can do, if it's 20, 25, or 30, you can do Autoland. There is a note here. Some airplanes were not certified for flaps 25. These are old airplanes usually, because most of the new ones now, they are certified for flaps 25 from the factory itself. But basically what happened is, in the beginning, Boeing didn't certify flaps 25 because of course it costs more to certify, and then later on they certify even for flaps 25, and they sell this to the company. So even the company that I work for nowadays, we have to check if we want to do a flaps 25 landing and Autoland, if that specific airplane is capable of doing or not. Okay, based on the certification of that specific airplane. But Boeing already certified, and basically flaps 20, 25, and 30, and you can consider this for your simulator. You can use for an Autoland. Okay, but there is one more catch. Flaps 20, it's only a non-normal landing flaps, so you cannot opt in a normal flight to land with flaps 20 or to perform an Autoland with flaps 20. Okay, so this is the first thing that I wanted to tell you. In this case, we are capable of doing Autoland with flaps 20, yes, because the checklist is telling us to use flaps 20. Okay, second part, I want to show you that, or let me rephrase this. In a normal flight, if you are approaching, or if you are doing your approach with flaps 20, 25, or 30, and you need to go around, you are going to go around with flaps 20. If it's less than 20 with the current flap, but if it's 20 or more, you are going to go around with flaps 20. In case you are dealing with this situation, hydraulic pressure system center, that the checklist is telling you to use flaps 20 and VREF 20 for landing, you still go around with flaps 20. Okay, this checklist is not mentioning anything about the go around, so the go around is the standard flaps 20. Okay, let me show you another checklist. For example, if we go here to the non-normal menu, and let's say that we have an bleed leak. Okay, so let's go to air system, bleed leak structure left. In this case, if you do this checklist, at some point it's going to ask if you are going to land using flaps 20. If you say yes, you are going to see that the note here is use flaps 20 and VREF 20 for landing, and it also mentions flaps 5 for go around. So in this case, you are going to go around with flaps 5. In our previous case, when you go to normal menu and we were on the hydraulic pressure system center, as you can see here, it only mentions flaps 20 and VREF 20 for landing. It does not mention flaps 5 for go around. So in case you need to go around in this situation, you go with flaps 20. So basically what I'm trying to tell you is standard go around flaps on the 777 is flaps 20. So if the checklist is not telling you that you have to go around with a different flap, you go around with flaps 20. So in this case, as you are approaching and landing in flaps 20, you are going to keep this flap for your go around, okay? Differently, for example, from the bleed leak checklist that I just show you, different from anti-ice leak on the engine, different from the overweight landing if you are using flaps 20, different from any engine related issue if you are using flaps 20, that in that case the checklist is going to tell you something about the go around flaps as well, okay? Another thing, a couple of checklists are going to tell you that you cannot do an Autoland, and then it doesn't matter which flap the checklist is telling you to perform. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples here. For example, we go non-normal menu. Let me see, jammed flight controls. So flight controls, and then you go to jammed flight controls. You are going to see that at some point of this checklist, the checklist itself is going to tell you do not use Autoland, okay? Even though the checklist started telling you to disconnect the autopilot and auto throttle, and it never asks you to re-engage autopilot and or auto throttle, okay? It also mentions do not use Autoland, okay? So Boeing is very clear. When you cannot do an Autoland, you cannot do an Autoland, and the checklist is going to tell you. Another example, if you go to flight controls and then pitch up authority, for example, if you have pitch up authority, it's going to tell you do not use Autoland, okay? It's not telling you to disengage the autopilot or the while you are doing the checklist itself, like the jammed flight controls, but this one is telling you you do not perform an Autoland. At some point, you have to disengage your autopilot and land your airplane manually, okay? If you go to flight controls and you go to pitch down authority, it doesn't say anything. So on the pitch down authority, yes, you can do an Autoland if that is the case, okay? So Boeing is very clear. Another checklist that I took note here that tell us not to do an Autoland is flight controls, flaps and slats, and slats drive, okay? For the slats drive, it also states do not use Autoland, okay? So if you go to flaps drive, you are not going to see that indication. So flight controls, flap and slats, and flaps drive, okay, is not going to tell you that you cannot use an Autoland. But of course, as any malfunction that you do not have flaps 20, 25 or 30, then you cannot use an Autoland anyway. So that's the point. When you do not use Autoland, when you do not have flaps 20, 25 and 30, okay, so if you do not have these flaps, you cannot do an Autoland because the airplane was not certified for it, but some failures are going to tell you to use one of these 3 flaps, and they are also going to tell you do not use an Autoland, because in that case the autopilot is not capable of performing the Autoland itself. Otherwise you can do it. So let's go back to our checklist that is the reason of this video in hydraulics, and then pressure system center. Note that at some point it tells you use flaps 20, VREF 20 for landing, doesn't mention the go around, so standard flaps 20. It does not mention anything about the Autoland, so you can do an Autoland. Okay, let me finish this checklist because we didn't. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to resets, reset no normal, and then I can go to no normal. And the first one that we did was hydraulic quantity low, just to follow the sequence. Then we go no normal, and we have hydraulic pressure system center. We already did this part of the checklist, so I'm going to override, and then this checklist is complete. Okay, so here we are where we were before, and basically what we have is the hydraulic pressure system center. 3 failures that are consequence of this hydraulic pressure system center: spoilers, auto speed brake, and no Autoland. The hydraulic quantity low center is what actually drive us to this failure. So another thing that I want to talk to you about is no land 3. Okay, when you have no land 3, basically you are going to have land 2. What it is land 2 or land 3? Land 3 means the airplane is fail operational. To try to give you an idea what is to have an airplane fail operational, it means an airplane that is going to perform an automatic approach and landing, and if close to the runway you have a failure or any failure close to the runway which is not related to autopilot, which is not related to the ILS itself. Okay, so if you have any other failure at low altitude, the system is still capable of performing an Autoland. Okay, if you have land 2, means that your airplane is fail passive. Fail passive means that your airplane is capable of doing an automatic landing. However, if something goes wrong, then your airplane is not capable of performing this landing by itself automatically, and the pilot has to intervene to land or to go around. So I'm going to give you an example that is going to be very easy for you to understand if you think about the hydraulic system itself. This airplane has 3 hydraulic systems. Okay, so basically if you have the 3 systems working, the airplane is capable of doing a land 3. Because if you are on really short final just before starting your landing itself and you lose 1 hydraulic system, you still have 2 hydraulic systems working and the airplane is going to be able to land. But now let's assume the situation that we have right now. The airplane, instead of the 3 hydraulic system, has only 2. So because it has only 2, the airplane is not capable of performing an Autoland with only 1 hydraulic. So right now you are in a situation that you already have only 2. So the system is telling you, pay attention, because if something happens and you lose another one, you will have to take the flight manually towards your touchdown. Okay, so basically it's the level of redundancy that you can have on your airplane that is going to allow you to perform an full automatic Autoland without worrying about systems degradation when you are really low. Okay, another example that I'm going to give you. We have 3 ILS on this airplane, 3 ILS receivers, okay? So once you are on your approach and you selected an ILS on your FMC, the airplane is going to set the ILS frequency on the 3 ILS receivers, okay? You have the option only in normal situation to select the ILS frequency on your FMC only once, but this means that that frequency, if it was selected by you or automatically by the FMC, doesn't matter, is going to the 3 ILS receivers. So basically, you need 2 for an automatic landing, okay? But what happened is this airplane have 3, so you are coming on your approach with 3. So that means if you have this level of redundancy, if you are really close to the runway and you lose 1, you still have 2 and the airplane lands automatically, okay? So what the system is telling us is that I have so many information, I have so much control about everything that is going on, that even if I lose something, I still have enough capability of performing an Autoland without an issue. Now have in mind that, for example, if you lost one of these ILS receivers, then instead of 3, you have only 2. And now, because you have only 2, if you lose another one, you have no means for the system to compare with any other ILS. So in this case, the system is going to tell you, I don't know if I'm doing correctly, so you take over control and you land it manually, okay? So the same rule applies from the hydraulic system for the ILS receivers and many other things on this airplane, okay? How about engines? We only have 2, but Boeing certified automatic landings with 1 engine. So if it's already certified with 1 engine, it means that you are fail passive in that case. If that is, well, we can consider not even a fail passive, we can consider a fail operational because only 1 engine is enough for you to perform the approach itself, so you don't need the second one, even though in this case we have 2 engines running, okay? So basically that's another thing that I wanted to tell you about the no land 3. One thing about low visibility procedure is that ICAO is changing, basically EASA is changing the definitions on low visibility, and they stopped adopting in many countries around Europe the definition of Cat 3 Alpha, Cat 3 Bravo, and so on. So basically now what you have is Cat 3 fail passive, Cat 3 fail operational, and this is exactly what I told you how to check how your airplane is, in this case how the 777 is. If you have land 3, you are fail operational. If you have land 2, you are fail passive, okay? What happened is, if you have no land 3, like in this case, you are limited to the minimums of a Cat 3 approach fail passive, which according to the current rules in Europe, 10th of October 2024, you need at least a decision height of 50 feet and visibility of 175 meters, which is 600 feet if you convert to US, okay? So basically, if we do this kind of approach, let me show you. If we come here and we go on our electronic flight bag, and I will try Echo Golf Lima Lima just in case here. Echo Golf Lima Lima approach on the ILS Cat 2 and Cat 3. If you see this chart here, you are going to see on the minimas that in this case London is still with the old indications from ICAO, so you still have Cat 3B. In this case, you cannot do Cat 3B, you have to revert for Cat 3A because you have no land 3. So DH of 50 feet, and for London, old procedure 200 meters. If you go to another place, and in this case I'm going to go to Echo Delta Delta Mike, maybe. Let's try Munich approach. We already have the new, or no? No, it's still the old information here, okay? So Jeppesen, and basically I didn't check this before. Basically Jeppesen and Navigraph didn't change these informations for these places. Doha, let me see if Doha, we have the new one. Yeah, Doha, we already have the new one. So I'm going to find a place in Europe that where the new rules apply. Lima, France, Papa Golf, maybe. Let me see. Yes, here is already the new one. You are going to see with me this one. So let's go to Paris. So Paris, it's only mentioning ILS Cat 3 or Cat 2. It doesn't divide anymore Cat 3A or Cat 3B. But because in this case we have no land 3, we can still do a Cat 3 ILS, but then we need minimum of 50 feet, 50 feet, radio altimeter, and visibility instead of 75 meters, 175. These are the new rules by EASA. Okay, so that's it. Another thing that I wanted to explain to you was this. So basically, when you have no land 3, you cannot land without a decision height. You have to see at least one light on your approach, on your runway center line, something that is going to guarantee to you that you are on the center line, and if something goes wrong, you have enough visibility, in this case nowadays 175 meters, to keep your airplane on the center line during the landing rollout, for example. Okay, something that you do not worry about when you have land 3, because the airplane have all the systems running, and it can controls the airplane even if one failure happens during this approach. Okay, so that's it as well about no land 3. So which means this approach we can fly an automatic land, and we are going to try this on PMDG just to see how PMDG deals with land 2 automatic landing without the hydraulic center system. Okay, well, on the previous video I showed you how to do an overweight fuel jettison. Okay, so I'm not going to do for this video, but I want to show you a couple of things. Like in the previous video, I showed you that if you go on your checklist itself, I don't really want to do this. Normal, we already did the after takeoff, then we were going to be on the landing. I want to override this, but I want to show you the notes. At some point it says primary flap and slat operation are inoperative. Plan more time for slower flap and slat operation. Okay, I want to explain to you because some people didn't get from the previous video. On the flaps itself, we have 3 modes. The first one is the primary flap. So primary, basically, what happens is you use your flap lever to control the flap and slats, and the flaps and slats will be moved by the hydraulic system. If you lose your primary flap slats operation, just like in this case, because you lost your hydraulic system, you go to the secondary flaps and slats, which means you still control your flaps and slats through your flap lever, but they are going to go up and down using electric motors. So they are very slow because the system is using electric motors. If you have another failure and then you lose your secondary flaps, then you have a third mode to extend and retract your flaps. And the third mode is called alternate flaps. Then that's the only time you are going to come here, arm the alternate flaps, and extend or retract your flaps as you need. But you don't do it by memory. You do everything based on the checklist. So if you go to non-normal menu and you go to flight controls, flaps and slats, and then let's see here. Flap slat control. It says the flap slats electronic units are failed, and then it's going to ask you, in this case we do not need to retract flaps, but eventually it's going to tell us one more time for alternate slat and flap extension. Okay, so in this case it's telling you you have to plan also more time, but this is for alternate flap slat extension. And then when we are talking about alternate, then we are talking about this one. Okay, so basically in this case, if we just take this checklist out of here, we are going to take flaps 1. Well, in this case it works because we didn't have the failure. I was going to try to show you how it works, but we didn't have this failure, so no problem. Okay, so my mistake. I would have to come here and on checklist. This checklist is complete, so we can cancel this and so on. So let me see if I have another failure here related to that. Menu, PMDG setup, aircraft failures, flight controls, programmed, let's take slat flap control 1 and this flap slat control 2. Okay, so we have failure and the system is not working anymore. So then you are going to try to extend your flaps to 1. And then we have the flap slat control. Okay, that failure that I wanted to show you. Okay, so in this case, it's telling us that in this case we do not need to retract. We go to flap override, and then we are going to use the alternate. And as you notice, flap position is at 1, but nothing happened here. The flaps didn't extend. So in this case, you need to go here, arm, and start extending your flaps. Okay, then in this case it's going to extend initially slats, and then it's going to go down flaps and so on. And even the checklist at some point is going to tell you to set your flap lever to a very specific position. I'm going to open this the real checklist that I have here, because this is something that is missing on PMDG. We do not have the procedure how to extend the flaps in the alternate mode. But if you go to the QRH, if I go to flight controls like we are, flap slat control, it tells us alternate flap extension, alternate flap arm switch alternate, and alternate flap selector, extend, monitor airspeed during extension, and we were going to be coming here and reducing the airspeed as we have the flaps that we need. Okay, so this is how it works on the real airplane. Okay, so but now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to off. I'm going to set this to retract because I want the system to retract, and I'm going to also cancel the flap slat control failure. So in this case we are going to have only, my bad, we are going to have only the leak on the hydraulic system center, so we do not have any problem with flap slats control anymore. Okay, so we can clear this, and then in this case, when we were doing this standard flight or only the standard hydraulic center problem, if you try to extend your flaps, it's going to tell you, look, the flaps primary mode is failed. You need to take ground presumed flap override switch to 20. We already did. And it says plan more time for slower flap operation. It does not tell you plan more time for alternate flap extension. It says plan more time for slower flap operation. In this case, we already have the flaps at 1. I have even to increase my airspeed here. There we go. And we are going to extend flaps to 5. So note, I'm not using, well, I don't need to use the alternate flaps. So everything that I select on the lever itself is going to work. Okay? So that's how we do our flap extension on the secondary mode. We still use the lever, okay? We still use the flap lever. We do not use alternate flap. Alternate flap is another failure that you can have, okay? Another thing, if you are doing the hydraulic pressure system center checklist, at some point, when you open this checklist that I just opened right now, approach checklist, you are going to set your altimeters, and also the checklist is going to tell you this, and I'm going to read from the Boeing quick reference handbook. Okay, so let me open here hydraulics, hydraulic pressure system center, and I go to the approach checklist, and then it says alternate gear extension, landing gear lever down. So we need to take the landing gear lever to down, okay? Alternate gear extend switch. Push to down and hold until all gear shows down or in transit. So you do this and you press. Hold it, all of them are in transit, so you can release. And then the checklist tells us, do not accomplish the following checklist, which is the gear down, okay? Sorry, the gear door, okay? Because now the gear is coming down and you do not have to take the checklist that is called gear door, which is going to show up in a second. After the gears are down, it takes some time for the system to retract the doors. And then, because right now these doors are not being retracted, after some time, just happen now, you will have the airplane telling you, look, gear door, you have a problem with the gear door. The checklist for hydraulic pressure system center is telling you that one or more gear doors are not closed, okay? So we already know, because this is part of the checklist itself, but PMDG was not able to include this on your approach checklist, so the system triggers this to you. Okay? By the way, if you do not know how to use the alternate gear extension, that is no problem, because here on PMDG, you can always do the normal flight. In this case, with the hydraulic quantity system center, hydraulic pressure system center, you take the landing gear down. You don't know the gear is not coming down because you don't know the system. Then what you are going to have is a non-normal checklist like landing gear and gear disagree. And then in that case, it says the gear position disagree with the landing gear lever position. You are going to answer something related to the gear lever, not the gear position, not the gear itself, the gear lever. And then this system is going to tell you how to do it, which is basically now take the alternate gear to down, reduction of below 270 knots may be necessary, and then that checklist gear door is going to be inhibited. Okay, you wait the 30 seconds. We already wait more than this, and then it says, it's even ask you, all gears are down. You say yes, checklist is complete. You do not have to worry about it. Okay, so what I'm trying to tell you is, if you follow all the checklists step by step here on PMDG, you are going to configure your airplane correctly for landing, even though a couple of steps are missing on the standard flow, but then they will show up once you try to configure your airplane and basically the system fails. Okay, so let's say you do not know, one more time, how to extend your gear using the alternate gear extension. Don't worry, take your gear down. Eventually you will get the gear disagree checklist, and the gear disagree checklist will tell you how to extend the gear. Okay, in this case I'm going to select flaps 20 here. We are pretty much ready for this approach. I'm going to configure this airplane now with less fuel, because I'm not going to do the fuel dumping as the previous video I did it. So if you want to know about fuel dumping, go back to the previous video. And I'm going to take the fuel here to something like 11 tons. Okay, and now as we have 11 tons, I'm going to select my flaps 20 of 154, 159 for approach. So our approach speed is 159. We can go to the hold and exit this hold. So we are ready for this approach. Just taking the fuel pumps off here because we don't need it anymore. And basically on this procedure also, one thing that I showed you on the previous video, because of the hydraulic pressure system center, it tells us at some point, do not arm the speed brake lever. This prevents inadvertent in-flight speed brake extension, and it says manually extend the speed brake after landing. Okay, so because of this, when you are doing the normal landing checklist on the real airplane, this speed brake indication is going to change from armed to down, and this is going to be green because your speed brake is at down. PMDG is not capable of doing this change, so the landing checklist here to be completed with the hydraulic pressure system center, you need to override this item, and then the landing checklist is complete. Okay, so we are done with the checklist. We are finishing the turn, and we can go down to 3,600, which is the minimum altitude for the next segment. Okay, so we keep going down like this. Thrust flight level change speed. I'm going to change this to vertical speed so we can keep going down to 3,600, and from 3,600 we arm our approach mode and we complete this video with an Autoland on the 777, dual engine, flaps 20 because of the hydraulic pressure system center. But note, even without the airplane main hydraulic system, the 777 is still capable of doing an automatic landing. Okay, so here we are. The airport is ahead of us. We keep flying. I didn't perform all the steps necessary for this approach on this video. If you, one more time, if you really want to know how to handle this hydraulic pressure system center failure, go back to the previous video. Okay, there I show you everything that I'm thinking, all the selections that I'm doing, including fuel dumping, including the checklist itself and so on. Today was just to cover a couple of things that are not really standard if you do not understand the non-normal checklist itself and how to deal with the information that is presented to you on the checklist. Okay, so I wanted to create this video to make it very clear for you when you select flaps 20, why you are selecting flaps 20, what is your go around flaps, if the checklist does not tell you anything. Some checklists they do, so why some checklists they do, why some checklists they don't. I just show you the reason. Also, I wanted to explain the no land 3 message, which basically we are going to see today, land 2, and the capability of still doing an auto land even with this failure. Some checklists that specifically tell you do not use Autoland, which I have 3 in mind: jammed flight control, pitch up authority, and slats drive, and that's it. Basically, everything else we cover on the previous video. Okay, so we are descending slowly right now, and oh, I lost connection. Amazing. Anyway, we can keep going down. I would change this to 200 feet per minute, and I want to reach Fox 12 at 3,600. This is the minimum altitude at Fox 12, so we can complete this approach. I already have localizer indication here on Papa 116. Okay, so in this case we could be tracking the localizer, and we are just waiting to comply with all the restrictions and also to have the glide slope indication that just appear. Okay, so from now on we can system-wise already select our approach mode, but we want to make sure that we are complying with 3,600 feet altitude restriction over Fox 12, because we have these hills on this approach. Okay, so you want to make sure you do not go below 3,600 until you cross all these hills here. Okay, which is going to be basically at 10 miles to your runway. Okay, so we are reaching 3,600. Very close to Fox 12. We are going to arm the approach mode. And there we go. We complete our flight. This one was supposed to be on, including weather radar and this. We can do the same on the other side. with terrain. And that's it. We are approaching Fox 12, approach mode, and now the airplane is going to capture the glide slope. Missed approach altitude is 3,600, if I'm not mistaken, so we do not have to change. Yeah, 3,600. And then we are going to see at 1,500 indication of land 2, because we do have no land 3. And from now on, I'm also going to give you the simulator audio. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so the runway is ahead. We can already see the runway there. Let's pay attention today on the indications on our autopilot, because on the previous video I did a manual landing. Of course, we are here on the sim to practice, and also depending on the situation, especially if you are close to the Autoland wind limits or above the Autoland wind limits, you may want to fly it manually like we just did on the previous video. But for this video, I want to show you that even without hydraulic system center, the airplane is still capable of doing an automatic land. So one more time, runway is showing ahead. I'm not going to keep this all the way. I just want you to understand the indications that we are going to have here. Usually at 1,500 after the ILS self-test, we are going to see land 3. In this case, it's going to be land 2, because we got the message no land 3. So here we are, approaching 1,500 radio altimeter. That's the point where the system does its check. And then we have here rollout, meaning the airplane is going to be able to keep the center line after landing. The flare is also armed, meaning the airplane is capable of pitching up close to the runway to touch down with the main gears. And land 2 is meaning that we are fail passive. If something goes wrong, then we need to land this airplane manually, okay? And if it was land 3, we were not going to be worried about any minor failure close to the ground. Okay, so here we go. I don't even know if this ILS is correctly centered to the simulator scenario itself, okay? But what we want to see is this. I just have to extend the speed brake manually after landing and apply the reverses, okay? Because in this case we do want to use full reverses, because our approach speed is 159 knots, almost 160 knots, so we do not want to hit our brakes. Not very aligned, but you are going to see that the airplane is capable.
100. 50.
Flare,
30.
idle,
10.
roll out, speed brake, full reverse. Okay, as you can see, the airplane is maintaining the localizer. It's not on the center of the runway because there is a discrepancy between the ILS itself and the scenery. but it's all normal in Microsoft Flight Simulator, unfortunately. 60 knots. We can take to idle reverse. Now even idle. And when we are approaching stopping, I retract the speed brake, so the outer brake disarms. And I can finish stopping on the runway with the brakes. Parking brake. And here we are, one more time, on the ground in Guadeloupe. Okay? And I was able to show you today an Autoland with hydraulic, recall, with hydraulic pressure system center and flaps 20. Okay, just to finish this video, I'm going to show you one more time the flight controls page, one more time, because on the previous video I showed you. So this is what we have in case we lose the hydraulic system center. We have the amber indication here on the center, and we have the amber indication on the spoilers that we lost. Okay, what did we lose on this situation? Let me show you one more time. I'm going to take the simulator audio out again, and I want to show you this. Give me 1 minute, and there we go. So here I have a list of what each system controls. So basically, the center system through AC motor pump or through air-driven pump is going to control, and here I go, spoilers 1, 5, 7, 8, 10, and 14. Okay, so these 3 spoilers on each side is what PMDG is showing you that is inoperative. As you can see, 1, 5, 7, 8, 10, and 14. Okay, so these are inoperative. What else the center system feeds? Ailerons, yes, left inboard and the right inboard. Oh, but then in this case I lost my inboard ailerons. Yeah, but this is only about the PCU itself, so the ailerons will still be controlled by the left hydraulic system through the left outboard and the right outboard PCUs. Okay, so this is just the PCUs itself, so the ailerons we still have from the left hydraulic system. Okay, flaperons. Okay, for the flaperons we lost the right outboard PCU. Okay, but we still have the left outboard through the left system and the left inboard and also the right inboard through the flaperons. Okay, so the flaperons are being controlled by 2 PCUs on the left side and still 1 PCU on the right side. Okay, how about the elevators itself? Okay, for the elevators we lost the left inboard PCU, but we still have the left outboard, the right outboard, and also the right inboard PCU. So we still have 3 power control units through our elevators. How about the rudder? The rudder we also have 3 PCUs, we only lost the upper one. The left still controls the middle, the right still controls the lower. How about the pitch trim? We lost the center pitch trim, but we still have the right pitch trim through the right system. How about thrust reverser? There is no thrust reverser on the center hydraulic. Main gear brakes. We lost the alternate and the reserve, which is not a big deal because the normal brakes are performed by the right system. Nose gear and steering. We lost normal and reserve. That's why we are not taxing after landing. Landing gear actuation. We lost on the nose and on the main gear. That's why we did the alternate gear extension. Okay, we did not use the standard hydraulic extension. We used the alternate gear extension. How about the main gear steering? We also lost the normal system, but another reason for us not to taxi, so we are going to be towed out of the runway. How about the trailing edge flaps? The flaps that are extending at the trailing edge of your wings. We lost only the primary system. Remember, we still have secondary system through electric motors, and we also have alternate system also through electric motors. It's the same thing for the leading edge slats. So we lost the slats primary, but we still have slats secondary and slats alternate. Okay, so I think you can understand that the 777 is very, very redundant. If you lose something, if you have a single failure, it's not a big deal. Okay, of course, if you lose another system, then the checklist is going to tell you land at your nearest suitable airport. Okay, because you cannot lose another one. Okay, so basically we have 3 hydraulic systems. Usually all of them are, or I'm going to say this way, all the systems, they are working for departure. So if in flight you lose one, which is really, really, really rare, okay, because you have different levels for the lines, you have different pumps, you have different source for the pumps and everything, but let's say that you lose one system completely, you still can fly normally with 2 systems and still perform an Autoland just like I showed you. Okay, and then in the extremely remote situation where you already lost one and you are losing another one, then Boeing tells you, okay, this is the time that you have to land, because we cannot stand to lose all the hydraulic systems. Okay, so guys, I hope you like this video. I know that is a lot of technical information, but I tried to give you the technical information, and I tried also to show what that affects on the airplane itself. Okay, so I show you about primary, secondary, alternate flaps. So I try to show you that you still can handle your flaps through your flap lever on the secondary mode, or for example, we lost the land 3 capability, but you still can do a land 2, you still can do an Autoland. Anyway, I try to come with pieces of information, and I was trying to show you how to deal with that during your flight simulator flight. Okay, so I hope you like it. If you learned something, please give us the thumbs up, share this with your friends, and I see you again most probably on the continuation of our virtual ground course. Bye bye.